I hear charge at 5K to go and increase the price to 1K to go is that at the Tour de France, for instance, ASO takes a another big grab of money, sticks it in their pocket, and the teams are still left in the same conundrum they're now.
What about Chris Froome? What does his future hold in your estimation? He hasn't said, unless it's privately, but I haven't read any public comments about what's next for Chris Froome. What do you think he should do, regardless of what he does do? Hey everybody, welcome back to Beyond the Podium. It's late November. I really should be back in school. I will be joined quickly by a student of sports psychology, Brent Bookwalter. Brent, how's your studies going this time of the year?
Hey, Mr. Roll, great to see you again, Bob. The studies are actually complete. I completed this master's degree just a few months ago, and I'm glad to have closed those formal books, although, the studying never stops, and that field especially is always evolving, but I'm definitely enjoying being out of the formal books a little bit and into some actual work with some athletes and teams. So that's the big looking up news for me in terms of not being in school. So I'm feeling good about that. How are you doing, Bob?
I'm doing great. I don't have your address. I'll send you some champagne.
Hey, pop some bottles. I know you send the good stuff. None of that mums, Bob.
You know it. So it's the off season. Oh, go ahead.
Well, I was just gonna say, checking in on you, and speaking of mid to late November, I feel like the holidays are in the air, and especially seeing you bringing back the Santa Claus beard there, Bob. And I know this was fully in effect last year, but for my own knowledge and understanding of you, as we haven't had a chance to spend a lot of time together, help me understand the rhythm and the flow, or lack thereof, of the Bob Roll Santa Claus. Beard there.
Yeah. Well, as you can tell, this is a lot of work. I'm totally exhausted, so forgive me. Growing this much beard so quickly, it takes a lot out of me. So I'm in the pedestrian time of the year. I have to move pretty slowly. It does give me a chance to think, though, get caught up on my own thinking. And one of the things I think about a lot is the business model of cycling. And it's been proposed that it changes so the teams are a little bit more stable. It's a very unique sport when you compare the popularity of cycling to other worldwide phenomena: football, soccer, baseball, basketball, all of the other sports that are very popular, and a very stable business model. The sports themselves might be in flux constantly, but cycling is maybe unique in the world of professional sports of how volatile it is. So one of the suggestions over the years has been some sort of gate receipt that all stadium sports pretty much are guaranteed. How does cycling navigate those waters? And it's been suggested recently that at 5Ks to go of stages in the big races, or the big races, the one-day races, you start charging people, and the closer you get to the finish line, the more it costs.
This is some prime off-season banter, Bob. This is the time of the year when the racing action is light, and it's an interesting time to return to these debates. I think, you've been at the sport longer than I have, Bob. You've seen it all. You've really seen it all in the multiple generations. Speaking from my career, my perspective, being alive for 41 years and watching cycling for much of that, I feel like we are constantly revisiting this debate, and the core of the issue is really what you described. It's not to pay or not to pay, make fans pay or not to pay. It's not about this camera angle on the bikes or not to have this camera angle. It really is this more inclusive and inter-agency collaboration between all the stakeholders that cycling still just can't seem to figure out. I think the key stakeholders, ASO, for instance, they're doing well. Anyone else in the race organization business, not even close. So you look at the teams, you look at the race organizers, the riders, the governing bodies, there really isn't this collective spirit of all for one for all. What are we doing to make our situation better for the collective? And the revenue definitely fits right into this puzzle, in that it's not shared. So to charge, to not to charge, to me, that really isn't the question. It's about, if you were, how is that split and divvied up and used between all the stakeholders to actually increase, to make it a better product for the fans, a better product for the racers, for the race organizers. If the powers that be could find a way to truly give everyone some benefit from that, then I think maybe we're onto something. But the first thing I hear of it when I hear charge at 5K to go and increase the price to 1K to go is that at the Tour de France, for instance, ASO takes a another big grab of money, sticks it in their pocket, and the teams are still left in the same conundrum they're now. So that's my first sort of 5 and 10 cents thoughts on it, Bob. What do you think after seeing generations of this, the debate raging on?
Yeah, I think it would be a shame if you charge people to watch a bike race. I think that is not in keeping with the spirit of the sport. I also think that the commitment to poverty that's essential to being, number one, a professional cyclist, number two, a team manager, and number three, even a race organizer. It's a totally different business model than any other sport in the world. And if you come to cycling to make a fortune, you better start with a bigger fortune because you're going to end up no matter what. And even when you think about the best professional athletes across the board and what they're getting paid compared to Tadej Pogacar, Jonas Vingegaard, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, it's almost embarrassing. I've just over the years seen teams come and go, like you most certainly have in a slightly shorter period of time. But you just have to accept the sport for what it is. And this constant debate of how we can stabilize the teams, how riders can get paid more, how race organizers can provide a stable product year in and year out is just not what cycling's about. And I don't think it's that bad. For most top sports people, a big part of their legacy as athletes is how much money they make. And cycling is not like that. No one's talking about how much money Eddie Merckx made in his career, or Greg LeMond or Miguel Indurain. There are some sad tales of ex-pros being in destitute straits very quickly after retiring, myself included. But making gigantic amounts of money to do something you would do anyways is not something that I've ever been interested in. And I think that cycling should be, while we can ask these questions, also be commended in providing something very different in the human experience for people. That's my take on it.
I love it, Bob. Yeah, that's one from the classics right there. Speaking to cycling, the true essence of it. I think you're right. That accessibility, the closeness, the proximity that anyone can go up to the roadside and be inspired, be wowed. Speaking from my own personal journey, looking at my development and path in cycling, that was really influential. The fact that I could, back in 1995 or 96, when Olympics, the mountain biking became an Olympic sport for the first time, there was a qualifying event for the U.S. team in Michigan where I was growing up, and I probably wouldn't have had access to go to that event if it was a ticketed, gotta pay, gotta get in line, go first. But I could go with my parents, wander out in the woods, wander through the expo, and really had this influential, very impactful experience of the accessibility right there, seeing, feeling, breathing the intensity of the competitors. And for me, that was transformative. So yeah, when I think about, all the 12-year-old versions of myself that are out there, the chance to inspire generations to come, I think that the accessibility is an important part of the sport. And even if you did, I'll go back to my statement from before, even if you did monetize that, that's not a solution. That doesn't fix it. You still have the same issue, the same sort of broken system of the collaboration and the revenue sharing that we have now. So to me, this is one of those conversations, those topics that resurfaces in the off season, much like rider safety, much like race coverage. Even I think if I had to steer this like revenue for the sport ship anywhere, it'd be, we can still improve on how we're actually covering the event from a TV perspective, and monetize the event, the revenue sharing through a greater product and a greater coverage. So yeah, lots of different ways to go here. I still am somewhat of a romantic like you, Bob, and hoping and wishing that it stays open. It stays free access. And let's not forget, Bob, you're at the Tour de France every year in the media compound. Your media compound is very fenced off, very restricted, adjacent to the VIP compound, that big rolling circus that is monetized. That it is sponsor dollars, it is admission passes to get in there. So there already is some of that, but yeah,
Yeah.
let's be careful about restricting people, the fire, the vibrancy of the fans
Yes.
from the most important parts of the race.
Yeah, and by the way, that entire revenue streams goes to one entity, the owners of the Tour de France, ASO, a privately held company. And there has been talk over the years, sometimes a little bit, the volume gets turned up a little bit, sharing the TV revenue. And ASO, so far, no dice. You got nothing from them so far. So is there any chance, do you think, that that will ever be something that comes to fruition? And that's already built in basically to the basic model. So I've been reluctant because of the personalities that have been asking for it over the years, but I might be subject to change on that also.
We all have to be careful.
Not to name any names.
I think easy to get in a dangerous ground and slippery slope there, but
Yeah.
absolutely, ASO they are the big kingpin in the sport of race production, of race coverage, and arguably for good reason. They have the product that everyone wants, the Tour de France, a bunch of the other best races in the world. Every time that we have this discussion about a breakaway league, or during much of my career, it was the organization called Velon that sprung up, and that was an organization, collective of teams that were committed to investing together, improving the coverage and the accessibility of the riders, information sharing, and ultimately that didn't really change anything long term. Maybe there's a little bit of ripple effect and a little bit of impact in terms of some of the accessibility to the data, the heart rate, the power, that we now are privileged to see in some of the riders' profiles from their bikes and their head units. But yeah, at the end of the day, ASO still wields the big hammer, and they go as far to say that, you know what, if the teams and the riders don't want to be in our race, we'll go get the minor leagues, right off the street, a league of their own style, and we'll have a Tour de France for them. So it's interesting. I think it would be beneficial maybe to even cue in a greater collective of rider voices as well. I think this is another area that, the riders have some representation in the CPA. There's been some improvement there with the leadership of Adam Hansen recently, but they're still undervoiced. And that's a situation, this hypothetical of take it or leave it in the Tour de France, play ball with ASO or not, that would hugely affect the riders and the teams and the sponsors. So quick ripple effect and extrapolation that's far reaching. We can't say that the world of cycling and the coverage, the monetizing of it is perfect, but in terms of this fan accessibility, I think this is one of the, if it's not broken, don't fix it, at least until the structure around it is equipped to really make the most of it and really benefit everyone in this situation.
All righty. Well, I don't think it's going to change by 2026 too much, that's for sure. Another topic that's been in the news is the next powerhouse country in cycling. Now, this is about, for us anyways, producing athletes at the top of the sport. What I've enjoyed in the last few years is the emergence of Denmark and Slovenia as powerhouses. Slovenia may be a little bit of a different discussion. They have like 5 pros. All of them are spectacular. Mohoric, Primoz Roglic, Tadej Pogačar, Jan Trotnik. So the few pros that they do have is insane. Denmark maybe is something more hopeful. And when the tour started there a few years ago, 2022, I believe it was, had a chance to be in Copenhagen for a few days beforehand. I was astounded by how many people rode their bicycles for everything that they did. Everywhere you went, there's mountains of bicycles, and at night they would be gone. So somebody is using them to get to work, do every single thing that you can imagine by bicycle, and the results an incredible peloton of riders: Jonas Vingegaard, Mads Pedersen, Mateusz Skelmos, Casper Asgreen, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So is there a country, Brent, that could produce something like that in the near future, in your estimation?
Yeah, Bob, interesting. I have that same memory of being in Denmark for the start of the Tour de France that year, and that was I had raced in Denmark before, but that was the first chance I had to be there as a tourist or a spectator, getting to ride the bike paths, ride the townie bike through the bike lanes. I was blown away. The even the rules of the road, the infrastructure, the traffic control specific measures just for bikes, the respect that cars have for the bikes as well. Wow, so jealous and envious of that. But as you said, that definitely translates into people on bike, the love for the bike, part of the culture. Uh, when you look at it that way, it's not surprising that Denmark, this little country, has risen to a place of cycling stardom and promise. I think these European countries, whether it's Slovenia or Denmark, it's a much different path to this increased role on the global stage and influence than it is for a country from Africa, or it is, speaking of Mexico, speaking also of the countries in the Middle East, which are also more prominent now in terms of the sponsor dollars and the support in the sport. So, yeah, I think really for me, like the next revolution, the next frontier in that globalization in these countries that are going to burst onto the fore are from these countries where cycling isn't necessarily interweaved and intertwined into the fabric of their being, like Denmark. So a country like Mexico, for instance, we're looking at Isaac Del Toro, huge population, huge sporting population, not known necessarily for living with the bike. The bike is a way of life. So you having the chance to have a front runner in the world stage like Isaac Del Toro, I think it really opens the mind, opens perspective. It makes it cool, which we are fortunate as Americans to have, Bob, during our career. Greg LeMond, then Lance Armstrong, really at the forefront of just kind of opening the whole nation's eyes of the sport, of the coverage, of the path to get there, and then the resources follow that as well. So for me, whether it's a country like Mexico or it's a country from Africa, such as Eritrea, Ethiopia, Biniam Girmay, obviously very, very influential in that path. To me, that is the sort of next frontier of these new powerhouses potential of cycling. But I do think it's going to take a while because unlike Denmark, they don't have this already known intertwined into their being and even their lifestyle. So you grew up in Denmark, any kid, the best athlete in school is going to already have a feel for the bike. The translation into a pure performance bike rider is going to be quite quick. We're, in some of these other countries, we're talking about really building from the grassroots, from the ground up. But there really is limitless potential, and I think that's really exciting to see some diversity. It's a much more diverse peloton, I think now than even when it was in your days, Bob. What was your observation just through your career, even on that globalization and that difference in the peloton, languages being spoken, cultures accepted, and that path there?
Well, during the Eastern Bloc political situation in Western Europe, whereby those athletes stayed amateur, I'm talking about all of the Soviet Union and the countries that came under that umbrella. So we didn't have a chance to race against them in the early part of my career. But then, as things changed towards the late 80s, early 90s, a lot of really, really good bike racers started coming out of Poland and Russia and the Czech Republic and Czechoslovakia. And it was like, oh my goodness, these guys are so good. East Germany. These guys are phenomenal. And it changed the sport almost instantaneously. The average speed went up. Overnight, there was an Italian team with all Russian riders called Alfa Lume. And from one year in the Giro to the next, the pace was like every day was a little bit faster. And so that was a huge, for me, it was really a big difference, a big change, and most delightful also. He had a much more diverse group of athletes. The Colombian riders and us from the 7-Eleven team were the first people from anywhere else to race against the Spaniards, the Italians, the French, the typical powerhouses. And so for me personally, it was great to see more countries involved. One country that I think is missing is China. And if they devoted the same sort of national resources, the population is there, the technology is there, like they do for diving, for example. They hadn't competed in diving before the 1984 Olympics. Never. That was their first games. One gold medal. This past Olympics in Paris, all the gold medals. They won everything. So if they devoted the same amount of resources and maybe ideology in a way to cycling, I think that they would start to become very, very successful. And that would be another massive part of the globalization of cycling, which I think is beneficial to everybody involved. So that's my 2 cents on that. In spite of the high hopes, there are still some troubling, every year at this time, some teams can't find any money. Some teams have no sponsors, and some teams completely vanish. One is unique, I think, in all of the years that I've been covering, and that's the Israel Premier Tech squad that has been racing-wise, just the pure racing, growing incrementally each year, getting a little bit better. And that is very typical of new teams with a lot of passion and great riders. They get better and better and better with the more knowledge and experience they have in the sport. It seems as if Israel Premier Tech, for a lot of other reasons besides just pure racing, is starting to go in the wrong direction. And we saw in the Tour of Spain protests against the ongoing conflict in the Middle East. And so that the identity that the team has, and if I'm not mistaken, there's no affiliation monetarily between the country of Israel and the team of Israel Premier Tech. There is one principal sponsor, that's Premier Tech, Canadian company, if I'm not mistaken, and they've decided they're not going to be involved with the program anymore. So a lot of things are in flux and changing constantly. Every few days, we get another headline from Israel Premier Tech. We'll get to another one in a minute, that Chris Froome is unlikely to be in the program next year. Who was the reason they started the team in the first place? So a lot going on at Israel Premier Tech, but I think it's pretty much assumed it will not be called Israel. It will certainly not be called Premier Tech moving forward. But it's since the Vuelta, it's just been absolute chaos on that squad.
Testing times for that organization. I think, yeah, you mentioned about this it's still a volatile time of year. It's November, so preparation is already commenced and underway for next season. Rosters are getting finalized for races. Training camps are already happening. Our colleague TJ Van Garderen is over at the EF Education Easy Post training camp in Spain right now. So yeah, to have that distraction is less than ideal. And if you're a rider in a team that is really privileged to be in a smooth sailing, nice flowy rhythm part of this year, it really is something not to be taken for granted, because you look around, there's still riders hunting for contracts. Like you said, there's teams searching for sponsors. And yeah, the team that I guess we'll now call formally is Israel Premier Tech, waiting to hear what that team will be called. Fortunately, the management has been quite optimistic and really steadfast in that there will be a team. We already have somewhat of a plan. We ask your patience. This will be revealed in time. I've been trying to pick the brain of our former colleague Bob Sambuli, who is a director at Israel Premier Tech. He's a professional. He's tight-lipped on it, but I know he is working hard, nose to the grindstone, and still continuing the prep. So I think that does bode well that there is going to be a team. I hope so. They've invested so much, and like you said, they've had this nice, really systematic rise in performance. A lot of the infrastructure being built, and the roster continuously just being refined. Big refinement or evolution of that roster this year with Chris Froome finally leaving that squad. So lots of TBD, lots of still like shake out and fall down from that mess, if you will. But all signs point to go in terms of there being a team. The worst thing that could happen is we get to December and all of a sudden 30 riders are on the market,
Yes.
100 staff on the market. And we've seen it before. So that's the catastrophe we just want to avoid. But so far, I'm hopefully optimistic as well for that team, that we'll be seeing them with some new colors and a new team name.
Last question. What about Chris Froome? What does his future hold in your estimation? He hasn't said, I don't, unless it's privately, but I haven't read any public comments about what's next for Chris Froome. What do you think he should do, regardless of what he does do?
Yeah, good question, Bob. My career overlapped with Chris Froome's a lot, so I know him a little bit from racing. I'll admit I don't know him well. The thing I'll say, the little bit I know about Chris Froome, the guy has continued to love racing his bike, riding his bike, training on his bike. He's been up against it with some crazy comebacks the past few years. And say what you will, he's had in cycling terms, hugely significant, in cycling terms, astronomical salary to help motivate and continue to prop him up. But no one can go through those comebacks, the fight through injuries, the rehab, the perseverance, the time away from home, the hours on the bike, without a real authentic love for riding a bike, for the sport, for the racing. So I would love to see him channel that into some form of coaching, mentorship, directing.
Yes, absolutely. Agreed.
Yeah, some sort of performance team management. Speaking of globalization of the sport, let's not forget Chris Froome's history as well. That he's not a born and raised, grizzled, chiseled Belgian that grew up with the cycling pedigree. He had to find his way there, and he was up against it for a long time, and also innovated and adapted and grew in that way. So I think from a development and a high performance standpoint, he has so much to offer, all of which is anchored into his true, genuine love for the sport. So I think we're going to see him still around in some capacity. I also wouldn't fault him if he said, you know what, I'm going to take a year and just let my hair down, take a breath, maybe view it from the outside a little bit, see where I fit in. If I was best buds with him and advising him, and we were having these heart-to-hearts, that's probably the path I would advise for at least the next 6 to 12 months is just take a breather, man, and enjoy the chance to step out of the circus, view it from the other side of the fences, then come back in with a targeted impact.
You guys are about the same age. Can you imagine if you had been going through it? Froome in the last 5 years?
Unreal. So much respect. I mean, yeah, his contracts were had a couple zeros on them compared to mine, so he was getting paid well for it. But that said, yeah, we are almost the same age, and when I think of where my body was at the end of my career, how hard it was to keep it going, how challenging the time away from family was, how the sport was also evolving. We keep having this debate and discussion about the careers are going to keep getting shorter. Chris Froome's whole career, it transpired and evolved through this sort of another generational shifting, and he was still there. Yeah, he wasn't at the front of the world's biggest races last year, but he was still part of the team. He was still training hard. He was still working on and assembling that puzzle on the mastery of the sport of cycling. And I so much appreciation and respect for him for that. So best wishes to you, Mr. Froome. And I'm definitely excited to see what the next chapter holds for him.
Likewise. And for you, Brent, what's the next chapter in your tremendous trajectory in cycling and otherwise?
Well, yeah, we're looking ahead to the Tour de France for sure, Bob. Right. Part of the team.
Yes, absolutely.
Back for this summer, the big highlight of our cycling calendar. But yeah, for me, in terms of the sport, what I'm most excited about is applying this recent studies of applied sports psychology and working with athletes and teams on the mental aspects of performance, the psychological aspects of performance to increase wellness, but really also performance. The age-old cliche sort of debate or question of what percentage of performance is mental. All these cyclists say that it's a big mental game. We hear it in the rider interviews of the Tour de France all the time. Today was all mental. It was really a mental battle out there. But the reality is so few of them, from the grassroots developing level to the professional level at the Tour de France, are really devoting specific time, specific deliberate energy, exercise, and training to working on their mind. And for me, that was really transformative in my career. And armed with that experience and a little bit of education and studies now, I'd like to make a ripple and an impact there. So That's
All
the
right.
quick elevator sales pitch for you, Bob. You're gonna sign up. I know you're still racing. I know you're still riding hard.
I can't wait for you to get into my brain and see what.
That's an intimidating place to go, Bob. Yeah, I know. I have to talk to a few of the gatekeepers before I go in there to make sure it's ready.
And what we would love is that everybody write in, give us your ideas, go to the comment section, and please let us know what y'all are thinking about all of these topics or whatever else you want to talk about. Well, Brent, thanks a million as always, and thanks everybody for joining us on Beyond the Podium. We will see everybody soon. Thanks, y'all.
For all your cycling content year-round, subscribe to NBC Sports YouTube page. We got it all.